Is she more important than me?
Hey! Well, I know you'll laugh, but I think we're going to have a really big quake.
You're really going to see that Marshall bitch, aren't you?
You know, if it wasn't 7:30 in the morning, I would have a drink.
Do you know who owns that head you just wrecked? I'm going to tell you, Slade. It's Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Thanks for braving the rain and coming out. On behalf of the Grand Central Market, who puts on these screenings with Vintage LA, I want to welcome you for the kickoff of our 2015 movie series. We're so excited to have Earthquake tonight. And can't think of a better way. You know, I've been involved with these screenings since the beginning, and it's just been so much fun to see all of the folks who come out and get a chance to talk to a lot of you. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have been to one of our screenings in 2014, Vintage LA? Woo! Yeah! Fantastic. How many of you, this is the first time you've ever been in the $1 Million Theater for a movie? Wow. Awesome. We are so delighted to have this theater open and available for events like this.
Might be experienced in an actual earthquake. The management assumes no responsibility for the physical or emotional reactions of the individual viewer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are you ready to rumble?
Yeah.
I am so excited. I have Monica Lewis here tonight. How gorgeous, right? How gorgeous. Monica and I have been following each other for several years on Facebook now. So
Facebook has become my second sister or something like that. I found out how to, first of all, I'd never learned to type. So I had to learn about that. And I'm going to be 93. And way it goes. It was late for me to learn anything. And I learned how to use the computer up to a point. And that big point is I met Alison, who really turned me on. And she I was there. Oh, that's so nice. And she has the kind of energy that I must admit, I used to have. But, you know, as you get older, you don't have it. So I do the best I can, and I'm happy. I have my health to a great extent, and I'm busy, and I keep busy because that really makes it all work. Yeah. And now then, you want to talk about the movie. Let's talk.
We do. Well, I was thinking about, when I was driving over here, about the craze of the disaster films of the 70s, where you have, you know, Airport 77 that you were in, Side Adventure, Towering Inferno. But, you know, those films they took place in a boat, or in a building, or in an airplane.
Yeah.
This is LA, earthquake.
This was the city.
Yeah, so it is to me that it is the disaster film, where the city is the spotlight.
Well, it was a more personal sort of story, because while it affected everybody, because we all were living here, and the story depicted what would happen to a city like ours in a really big earthquake. And I think that my husband Jennings, who produced it, he had a vision about events at that time. And he said people are not going to come out of their house to see just any old movie. The day is past. It costs too much to park, families get involved, and it's the whole thing. They're going to stay home and watch television unless we do an event. I've got to find an event. Well, we went to a screening, and there was a minor earthquake. It wasn't a big one. And he came home and he said, I know what my event is. It's going to be an earthquake.
Now, how did it all come about to film Earthquake?
Well, he then got very involved with it. I mean, the first thing he did when he got home is went to the Rocky's bed, our little one, who was then a really little one, to make sure he had not been awakened or frightened. But he slept through it. But the whole thing is, he really got very involved with the whole technical side of what happens with an earthquake and why the architecture had to be changed. And the things that intellectual people do, and he was certainly that, as well as so funny and witty. But he went to the bottom of it, and there's nothing that I can say, this is how you stop an earthquake. You can't. But you can make progress in how to build your city. And that's one of the points he wanted to really make in the movie. And had Charlton playing the architect who realized what this whole situation was. And so I thought that was really what it was all about. And then he got very theatrical with it, because Jennings was very theatrical and larger than life. And it worked. The picture made more money for Universal than any other single picture.
Oh, wow. Well, we've been sharing some great photos on the Vintage LA Facebook page of the miniatures that they built. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the one who should tell you all that. We had the greatest artists on that set. Great artists, great painters, great math painters, we had a great director too. Everyone on that set was purely gold. And the people who were working, the actors, we just loved everything. We loved the whole stunt group, who had the glass shoved in the eye, you know, the gory stuff. And actually, I made friends with them. And from the first fall I took, coming out of the elevator scene, they patted me up, and I took it and I did it myself. They started to adopt me. So when we got to the big scene of where we're coming down the chair, and it's supposed to be 23 stories high, everyone said, well, we'll use stunt people. And I said, I can do it myself. And Lauren Green said, "Don't say that, because then I'll have to do it too, and I don't want to do it, I said, "But it's nothing. It's supposed to be 23 stories high, but it's only 3. And it'll be okay, I mean, no one's going to let us get hurt." I said, "I'm going to do it." And the stunt people were giving me a badge that I was an honorary stunts person and all that. And I didn't want to let them down. So when I said I would do it, he said, "Okay, if she can do it, I'll do it." At which point we all did our own being dropped down out of the thing. And the other thing I contributed was the stocking bit when we were the pantyhose. And I said, "Here's some," and I took down it like that's going to really make it. But we had to tie the chair with something. And of course it was all, mirror and smoke. But even 3 stories, all those pictures that are in the ads, Monica looks like terrified. And I was a little frightened, but after the first floor, nothing. I got outside. Hooray for Hollywood!
Which leads me to one question that I wanted to ask you, is you were so glamorous, and how was that transition to play a part where everybody kind of had to look a mess?
Well, I think that's part of acting, and I think the art of acting is, not to be looked askance at. There's more to it than most people think. And what an actress really wants is a meaty part. And look at someone like Meryl Streep, who's so great. She's so, just beyond words. I have so much respect for her. But you have to be that good. And even a little bit where you could be either a mess or a little wacky or heartbroken or hysterical, that's part of acting too. It's not just saying, "Here I am, I'm gorgeous, I'm glamorous, take my picture." My close-up, Mr. DeMille. I mean, it's not just that. You really want to make people feel something. You want to feel it yourself. And acting is an art form. So I felt pretty good about being a mess.
And tell us about the cast. I know you go back, you knew Ava Gardner for many years before.
Ava was a very dear friend of mine, and I think the public would like to hear a little bit discute about her. First of all, I met her in 1950. And that was a long time ago, and we were the same age. And we were both about 52 when we did this movie, so it was a big jump in time. But Ava was one of the nicest people I've ever known, and we had so much fun together. And on this particular shoot, we would go into her dressing room and play old Frank Sinatra records. Which was fine, and she spent a lot of time at my house, and she was just an amazing spirit. When I first met her, we all wore what was called waist cinchers, which pulled your tummy in very tight, and then the big flowing skirts. And we all died with this, and we couldn't eat lunch, So I was in the commissary at MGM, and this is when we were young. And I'm thinking, I'll have some unsweetened Jell-O or something like that. And she said, "I'm going to have key lime pie and a nice coffee." And I said, "What are you doing, Ava?" And she said, "Monica, the way to live your life, if you can't have it all, at least have a bite of something you love." And I remember that. All these years. And she lived that way, but she was a great spirit, a great sport. And when she was had a stroke. This is kind of sad, but she was calling me almost every day from the hospital. And she said, well, when she hung up, the last thing she said to me, she said, well, honey, she said, if you know a guy who's looking for a southern broad who's had her accent corrected, with one arm that hangs and a limpy lip, I'm his girl. And she never felt sorry for herself, and she was quite something. And I really appreciated that friendship for many, many years.
Yeah. It's been very special working with her.
Yeah.
Can I ask you the last time you saw Earthquake?
I haven't seen Earthquake except on television, little bits and pieces in years. Not really, not the whole thing.
Well, people were asking, is this going to be in Sun Surround? And I kept saying, yeah, the theater would collapse. That's definitely not an option. Because on the page, people had talked about seeing it at the Chinese theater, and literally things were falling down. Yeah. Explain that, I know the process is a different story, but seeing that for the first time and being in the theater with Sun Surround, what was that like?
Well, I was living with it, don't forget. I mean, Jennings had originally thought of this idea with low frequencies and all sorts of things I don't understand. And then I'd been on the set and I'd been back in the sound room, so I had a kind of knowledge, not real knowledge, but certainly exposure to the mechanical things and stuff that I'm not really, anybody who can explain it to you. So I don't think that I had such a shock. I was so thrilled. I was totally thrilled because the reaction from the audience was fabulous, just fabulous.
And it really holds up. I've been watching Capitol Records in the damn break, and it's really, it's pre-CGI, and I still prefer Earthquake.
Well, it's the best.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you asked me, and I'm so glad all of you came.
Yeah.
And I hope you enjoy it very much. And with that, I'm going to say love you. He wants me to tell about this time I was in Europe with my husband, his daddy, Jennings, and we were seeing all the exhibitors of the movies, the people who run movies like this, selling our product, and I was there to be part of the picture, or part of the whole thing of making nice with people. And we had a party with some of the people at who were in Rome, and we were in Italy at the time. So we had this big showing in Rome, and we ran the picture in a lovely theater. It was not quite as beautiful as this, but it was very nice. And we were going to make an airplane back to LA immediately afterward because we had finished our work. So we start to leave the theater afterward. The exhibitors love the movies. They're all going to book it. Everybody wants to have it. And it's great. And we walk out, and a guy comes running down. He says, "You got to come into my restaurant. You have broken all of my glasses." So we paid. We had Universal pay them to redo their one. All the bottles of scotch and everything had fallen down from the shaking. But we got to the airplane, we got home, and there in front of us, don't need to win where are you getting?
Right here.
There he is. Was our friend who did the costumes for Earthquake, Bert Miller, with a little boy on his side, and the little boy was Rocky waiting for his daddy to come back and go to the Dodger game.
Go Dodgers.
Go Dodgers, go, right? And here he is now.
We have one more person I'd like to introduce. Charlton Heston's son is here. Fraser, why don't you come on up for a minute? Fraser Clark Heston.
Hi, how are you? I met you when you were about 2.
Oh my gosh, have I changed at all?
Not a bit.
Okay, thank you. Wow, what a great turnout for a rainy night. Thanks for supporting this wonderful $1 Million Theater and the film of Earthquake, which I'm very excited to see again. I haven't seen it since it came out. I thought a little bit about what my dad would say if he were here tonight to you. The first thing he'd do, if it stopped raining, he'd probably take credit for that. If it hadn't stopped, then he would, say he had nothing to do with it. And then he'd probably tell you a quick story, not from Earthquake, but from Ben-Hur. And it tells you a lot about what sort of person he was. So I'll briefly tell you. He was training for the chariot race for about 3 months, and he took it very seriously. In those days, as you said, there was no CG, no computers, no computer animation. So you did a lot of your own stunts, or even you had to learn to do the crafts like driving a chariot with 4 horses. So he trained for months and months, and the second unit director, who was a wonderful stunt coordinator as well, named Yakima Kanut, who was just fantastic. He had trained him, and his stuntman, Joe Kanut, Yak's son, was working with him as well. And finally, the day came when he actually had to shoot the race, and he was a little nervous. And he took Yak aside. He said, "Yak, I'm a little worried here. Some of the other fellas, they're almost all stuntmen and wranglers and rodeo cowboys and professional horsemen, and I'm just an actor. And I've got to ride this thing. I don't know how I'm going to do in this thing." And Yak looked at him and tipped his cowboy hat back in his head. He said, "Chuck, you just stay in the dang chariot. I guarantee you're going to win the race." It's good fun. But, this movie is a disaster movie. And it was one of the first that Dad did. I think he went on to do 2 others, if you count Airport 75, which I think was also with Jennings, was it not? Yeah. And also 2 Minute Warning, which was a sniper movie about Super Bowl. And Dad was really enthusiastic about doing something that he thought would be popular. But one of the most important things to him, and this is what we were talking about earlier, was character. And the problem with, as he called it, is multiple jeopardy in the structure of a disaster movie. You've got, 6 or 7 other stars on the screen, and they all get their 15 to 20 minutes of screen time. So how do you develop a good character in that amount of time? And there's an interesting story. He had script approval at that time, but not final cut. And it was very important to him that he basically wanted to film the ending a certain way. I won't tell you what it is in case you haven't seen the movie. But he had something he wanted to do in the ending. He got them to change the script. Jennings submitted it to him. He accepted it. And they went on about their business and made the movie. Everybody was happy. And one day he saw them filming a scene that was an alternate ending of some kind. And it was mainly with George Kennedy. And he said, "Well, why is George doing this ending? This doesn't make sense." And he said, "Well, it's just coverage." The director said, "It's just an alternate." And he said, No, wait a second. I don't have final cut. I have script approval. So if you want me to film this scene, I'm not going to do that. You can film George, but there's no way in the world I'm going to do it, because I may have fallen off that turnip truck, but not last night. So he got them to do his ending, and you can decide whether it was the right ending or not. Did you see the film?
It was. Thank you so much for being here. It's such a surprise.
Thank you all.
This used to be a hell of a town, officer.
70 altogether, and they only brought up 40.
40. Yeah.